Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. Now, recent statements by Russian President Vladimir Putin about potential changes to Russia's nuclear strategy have raised global concerns. The revised doctrine suggests that Russia could use nuclear weapons not just in response to nuclear attack, but also if conventional weapons threaten its existence. This shift comes as tensions between Russia and the West escalate, especially regarding support for Ukraine. Joining us today on TVP World to provide insights on the evolving situation is Carina Stachetti, a senior expert on Russia, Ukraine, and the Baltic Sea region. Hello, ma'am, and welcome to TVP World.
Thank you for inviting me.
So we are looking at Vladimir Putin once again tuning up the rhetoric when it comes to the use of nuclear weapon. Is this another situation where we're looking at some saber rattling, the boy who cried wolf situation, or is it something that we should be alarmed by?
Oh, Vladimir Putin warned that his country could use nuclear weapons in the event of a so-called massive launch. We do not exactly what this term recover. He said a massive launch of air space attacks with missiles, drones, and that an attack carried out by a non-nuclear state, as you just explained, but supported by a nuclear armed power could be considered as joint aggression. This is not the first time that Putin threatens Ukraine and the West with potential nuclear strikes. In the context of the aggression war he has launched himself in Ukraine in February 2022. Putin's statement nevertheless comes at a time when weaknesses of Russian conventional armed forces are obvious, with heavy losses of equipment and high casualties on the Ukrainian territory, but also in some border regions of Russia, like Bryansk, Kursk. In addition, the new recent failed taste of missile Sarmat a few days ago seemed to remain a serious preoccupation for Russian authorities. And another factor, of course, is that Ukraine is trying to convince partners to let it use long-range missiles against Russian territory, as far as Russia continues its aggression against Ukrainian territory and population, destroying infrastructures and energy systems. So we have clearly an escalation of rhetoric.
Right, like you mentioned, the term that Putin uses is very vague. Like you said, in the case of mass launch, whatever that means. And I'm also wondering whether or not the vagueness was intentional. Do you think the ambiguity is a sign that they are perhaps not fully committed to actually utilize these weapons, but mostly using it as a bargaining chip?
Russia's approach, I would say, to the rhetoric of use of nuclear weapons is a long process that began before 2022 and the launch of war by Russia in Ukraine. So Putin's statements on nuclear issues have become a particular, I would say, feature of Russia's authoritarian regime communication. It's a very specific communication, aimed mainly to threaten public opinions in the West, and not only, of course, Ukrainians. The goal is clearly to leverage and maintain pressure on governments and public opinions, and using media propaganda. Actually, as of today, there is no revision of Russia's nuclear doctrine. And let me remind that the first, theoretically, the Russian nuclear doctrine, the latest version of which dates from 2020, provides for strictly defensive use of nuclear weapons should the country be attacked by weapons of mass destruction or in the event of aggression with conventional weapons, threatening the very existence of the states. It's a quote, sorry. And second, in several cases, as you just reminded a few minutes ago, Moscow even reserved the right to use nuclear weapons first. As a result, Putin's latest statement on nuclear issues doesn't lower the threshold for nuclear engagement, but indicates that the threshold of nuclear engagement, remained as blurred as before. In addition, we can say that Putin's statement confirms that Belarus is under Russia's nuclear umbrella.
You also mentioned that Ukraine is still calling for its partner for the use of long-range weapon inside Russia, which is one of the things that Putin mentioned as crossing some sort of red line, whichever way that it's drawn multiple times. Now, Zelensky has also been in the United States talking about this particular topic, urging for its partner to allow its use of these long-range weapons. Do you think that is also a sign that, at least on the Ukrainian side, they don't find these threats to be in any credible way, shape, or form?
Western nations, European countries, members of NATO, of course, and the US will remain cautious regarding Russian destabilizing statements and verbal provocation, I would say, on nuclear issue. There is a growing understanding in the international community that Russian statements amount to little more than intimidation and threats. And so I would like to remind, that nuclear issues are serious topics and are treated and debated very seriously without any spectacular statement in the West. With a rearmed and aggressive Russia, we are aware that we need conventional armament capable of facing any aggression in order to sound out the adversary's intention and say, is this a situation serious enough for your risk to take the risk of being totally destroyed? So in this context, from my perspective, the latest Putin statement is an escalation of rhetoric.
Right, like we like to describe Russia's nuclear saber rattling as comparing it to the story of the boy who cried wolf, but oftentimes we forget that the end of the story, the wolf actually came. So is there any signs that to particularly look out for when these rhetorics are starting to go from just being rhetoric to something that is actually more serious?
Oh, at this stage, the Western military support remains high, and it is a top priority. Whether political agenda in the US or in Germany or in France is at this time occupied by internal issues, but we are convinced that Ukraine remains a priority, and equipment supplied. The supply of equipment will continue. So to conclude, I would say that I don't see any change in the the posture of European and American partners of Ukraine.
Right, we'll have to see how the situation develops. But meanwhile, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your input and insight. Really appreciate it. And thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.